All right, let's take a look at Unit 7, Lesson 2, study types. So for each of these questions, we're going to determine whether it's a statistical question. And if it is, we're going to determine whether it's an experimental study, observational study, or a survey would be best at providing the data to answer this question. All right, and then we're going to explain our reasoning. All right, so for the first question, we have, do dogs who eat only brand A of dog food have more health problems than those who eat a variety of food brands? And that is a statistical question. And so we want to see if the dogs who eat this dog food have more health problems than those who eat a variety. So a survey would not really answer this question. Observational might be kind of hard because you might not be able to tell which dogs are eating what food. So an experimental study would probably be the best one, because then you can randomly assign certain dogs to brand A and then randomly assign the other dogs to a variety, and then look at the information to gather the impact of the health. You could do a survey by asking people about their dog's diet and filling out medical history. You have to recognize that you might not get reliable answers because you're asking in a survey. I think an experiment would probably be the best one, though. Number 2, do people who sit for at least 8 hours per day have more health problems than those who sit for fewer than 8 hours per day? And that is a statistical question. You can answer that with a statistical analysis. You can gather data and come to a conclusion. This one, the ethics of doing an experimental study would not be appropriate. It also could be challenging to randomly assign certain people to sit for 8 hours a day because their work, their lifestyle might not allow them to do that, while others might naturally already be doing that. So either a survey or an observational study is going to be better for that one. Surveying might be the easiest way, but an observational study could be used by gathering information from like reports from hospitals or doctors' offices or something like that. So either a survey or an observational study would probably be the best one. Number 3, which brand of dog food has the most protein per serving? That is not a statistical question. All you have to do is look at the nutrition facts and get your answer. So you're not really trying to see if, you're not comparing two things. Yeah, that's just a factual information. So that is non-statistical. That is not a statistical question. Okay, and then do people who eat a low-fat diet feel healthier than those who eat a variety of foods? And again, you're trying to compare two things. So that is a statistical question. All right, and then looking at the types of studies, you could do a survey to ask people about what kind of diet they have and how healthy they feel. You could do an experiment or an observational study and assign people to different diets for an experiment, or track the type of diet that they already follow in an observational study. You would also have to survey them to find out if they feel healthier. So that would be part of the study. So either way, you'd have to have a survey in there, but then you might want to do either an experimental or an observational study to gather the information about the diet. All right, let's take a look at part 2. And so we are going to take a look at, we're looking at surveys, observational studies, or experimental studies. And we're looking at these questions, these 6 questions, and we're going to determine which kind of study is the best one for each scenario or for each question. And we always want to explain why, right? We're explaining our reasoning. All right. So number 1, do smokers get in more car accidents than non-smokers? And so the easiest way to do this one would probably be a survey. And you could just ask people, do they smoke or do they not? And how many car accidents have they gotten in the past, 10 years or whatever. You really wouldn't want to do an experimental study because then you are requiring people to smoke, and that is unethical. So you wouldn't want to do that. And then you can't really do observational because most police reports don't include whether or not somebody smokes when they get into a car accident. So a survey would be the best one for that particular case. What is the student's favorite type of sport at this school? Again, you can't do an experiment because that doesn't even make sense. And then an observational study wouldn't really make sense either. So the only way to actually collect the data about their preferences is to ask them directly. So that would also be a survey. Number 3, do people who chew gum while studying do better on tests when they chew gum while taking the test than when they don't chew gum while taking the test? You could try to survey this, but you would also need to get some observational information, like how successful were they on their tests. This one would best be done with an experiment, because then you could try a group that chews gum, have everybody chew gum while they're studying, and then have one group chew gum while they're taking the test and the other group not chew gum, and then see how their test scores compare. Or you could even do like a paired test where they take a test while they're chewing gum and they take a test while they're not chewing gum and compare those results, as long as the test is testing the same material. But we're not going to get into the weeds of how to design a study right now. All right, how has the percentage of the world's wealth owned by the top 1% of individuals changed over the past 300 years? Well, this one will be really hard to do a survey on because if we're going back 300 years, those people are dead, so we cannot survey them. We also couldn't really do an experimental study because, again, you can't experiment on people from 300 years ago. That doesn't make sense. So an observational, where you're collecting data from different databases, you could find some information and be able to make some kind of determination based on that. So we're going to go with observational here because that's really the only one that makes sense, because you can't survey people from 300 years ago, nor can you run an experiment. All right, number 5, do strawberry plants produce more fruit when growing in a greenhouse or outside? You can't survey plants, so that wouldn't make sense. Observational, you could try to do that by gathering information, but I don't know where you're going to get the information from a greenhouse or a farm. So it'd be best to use an experiment because you can control the elements or the details of it. And so you could have a greenhouse and have strawberry plants in there and have and have some strawberry plants planted outside and then compare how they grow and which one produces more fruit. All right. And then finally, what are the most important issues for voters in a district at the moment? An experiment would not make sense here. Nor would really observational data. You're trying to figure out what's important to people. And so a survey is going to gather that information by asking the people what is important to them. So that's how you could collect the data, by asking them. All right. And then the last part, 2.3, relaxing television. So a study of 1,000 people aged 20 to 30 asked how much television each person watches each night and how each person would rate their energy level in the evenings. The study showed that the people who watch TV or television for at least 2 hours every night have lower energy in the evening. than people who do not watch as much television. Is this study a survey, observational study, or experimental study? Explain your reasoning. All right, so in this study, they were asked how much television they watch and how they rate their energy level. So when people are being asked this information, that is a survey, because they are actively gathering information from people, but they weren't put into specific groups. So it's not an experiment. And they're directly asking the people. So it is a survey. Does this mean that watching television for at least 2 hours every night lowers energy in the evening? No, by all means, it does not. Correlation, how something relates to another thing, is not the same as causation. It doesn't mean that it's causing something, right? So correlation does not equal causation. Just because there's an association between two data pieces, that does not mean that one caused the other. That's like saying, well, ice cream sales are higher when crime rates are higher. Well, that doesn't mean that the selling of ice cream causes crime. That just means that there's some kind of correlation between the two. And most likely it's because ice cream sales go up when it's warm outside, and crime tends to go up higher when it's warmer outside, because it's easier for people are outside more, and so more crimes are committed, right? And so just because people are watching TV for 2 hours at night doesn't mean that it's lowering their energy level. Actually, it might be that the opposite is true. They might be watching TV for at least 2 hours because their energy level is low. Who knows? We'd have to do a study. All right, and then part 3, if you were to do your own experiment to determine if watching TV for at least 2 hours every night lowers energy in the evening, how would you set up the experiment? Well, you could find people to participate in the study, and you'd need to find a fairly large amount, maybe 100 people, and divide them up into 2 groups randomly. So get a large group of people, divide them randomly into 2 groups, right? Then you could take a survey of their energy levels. Can't write today. So survey energy levels in the evening. At the start of your experiment. Then you're going to ask one group to watch TV, and then ask the other group to not watch any TV. And then you're going to have them do that for about a month, and then survey them again to see if there's any changes in their energy levels, and see if that has actually affected it. All right. You can read the Are You Ready for More if you want to. That's entirely up to you. And then we have our summary. So we always start our statistical study with some kind of research question, which we talked about earlier. We looked at what is the information that we need to know. And then we looked at how can we collect the data, what kinds of studies, and then deciding which kind of study is the most appropriate for that particular question.